thought if it's okay with you, I'd start by singing a song. I bring a guitar. I carried it all the way from the house over here. Might as well use it, right? Thank you. Well, I've been a waiter, a roofer, a clerk. I've shoveled manure until my pride hurt. When you're starting out, it's all part of the work to do what I do. Now, I've been evicted for not making rent. Made my daddy wonder where my good sense went. For the price of a dream, my years have been spent to do what I do. To sit here tonight with a six-string guitar and be what I've always been in my heart, just for the chance to play you my song and the thrill when I hear you singing along. It's been worth everything I've been through to do what I do. Well, I played for empty tables and chairs, to drunks that don't listen and crowds that don't care. I've been told countless times, boy, you ain't going nowhere to do what I do. And I hope the critics and the skeptics alike all bought a ticket to this show tonight. They'll see firsthand that I have survived, and what doesn't kill you makes you more alive. And I'm one of the fortunate few to do what I do. Well, there's so much joy this music can bring, so I count my blessings when I step up to sing. 'Cause there's so many people who'd give anything to do what I do. And I thank all of you. I can do what I do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have you all had a wonderful time here so far? Thank you. Well, good morning to everybody. The first thing I want to tell you is how excited that I am that you are here, and how excited I am to be here and for the next little while get to share my heart with you. It's really something and humbling to know that so many of you, all of you, have taken the time out of your busy schedules and lives to get in your cars or on an airplane and travel to a farm in Tennessee to sit in a field with a bunch of strangers listening to people talk about planting seeds, growing food, and learning skills that I bet a lot of folks around you back home would say are unnecessary today. Well, I thank you for being here. My sister's standing over there. That's my sister, Marcy. Hi, Marcy. She had a restaurant here for 17 years that we just closed down a few months ago, but she's still been cooking at her house and making things at home. So her and Indiana have been making homemade jams, and so she has them over in her booth. So I'm glad to see you. I'm also glad to tell people that's the new Marcy Joe's, is just a little booth over there. Our whole team, it's mostly my family. We have 100 acres here, and my sister Marcy lives in the White House on this side, and her husband Donnie, who Indiana calls him Uncle Donkey. He lives right over here. He's riding on one of those little golf carts around here, working. No, he is working hard. And then my sister Candy and Keith. Keith runs the festival, and Candy is in charge of the merch silo over there. They live on the other edge of the farm. And then some of their children, Keith and Candy's daughter Rachel lives on the river right across the street. Marcy's daughter Megan lives. She's moved a camper over there, and she's squatting, and she's refusing to leave. But she's the best kind of squatter because she's growing a great big garden for all of us. And she's in charge of all the volunteers here, and everyone's worked so hard. We've been working all year long getting ready for this weekend, and I hope that you have all had a great time so far while you've been here, but also that you've heard some things or watched some things and seen some things that have encouraged and inspired you to take the next step or maybe the first step on your homesteading journey. When I went by the Homestead merch silo, I didn't know this, but my niece's husband, Dalton, who's a farmer, but he's also our graphic designer. He made this, which I just loved. It says, "Putting the home back in Homestead." I didn't even know that he made that, and it was really sweet for me. They got a bunch of little stickers over there because that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about putting the home back in homesteading, about how, in my opinion, without understanding the importance of the home, homesteading and homemaking and any other things that we're excited about learning, they're going to leave us feeling more empty and more disappointed than ever before if we don't understand what home is and what it actually serves, the role that it serves in our lives. I'd like to start my talk this morning with one of my favorite quotes. This is by a man named George Moore. "A man searches the world over looking for what he needs, and he returns home to find it." And that quote pretty much sums up my whole life in one sentence. I have been on one long, long journey home. Of course, most of the time I did not know that I was, but in hindsight, it's easy to see that I have been trying to find my way home most of my life. I'd like to share some of that journey with you in hopes of two things. First, that it might encourage you in your own journey to see a bigger picture of what we're all doing here. And secondly, that you might discover a new way of looking at home and what role it plays in your life and your family. Now, I know some of you might be wondering why someone who is known primarily for music is here speaking about home at a Homestead festival, and even more so, why someone who's known for music is putting on a Homestead festival at his house in the first place. Well, the fact is, I am just like most of you. I have come to learn the hard way that the things that I had grown up dreaming about and striving for, in the end, left me empty. They left me wanting more, something more than money and acclaim and success. Now, don't get me wrong, I am very, very thankful for music. It is how I got here. In a way, it is how you all got here too. It's what made this moment even possible, because in 1999, with the royalties of the very first song I ever had recorded as a songwriter, I took those royalties and I bought a rundown farmhouse right here in 1999. And then I started fixing that house up. And this 25 years later now, but that's kind of how this all came to be. Now, I bought this farm and the land that we're on, at least some of it, 25 years ago, this past Memorial Day weekend. And here on our farm, my family and I have come a long, long way in learning how to grow our own food and becoming a little bit more self-sufficient than we were before. But I myself am no expert in homesteading. I'm just like you. I'm going to go set in all these tents, and I'm trying to learn all I can. Although my background is in music, what I am actually best at, I think, is storytelling. It is what drew me to music in the first place. I grew up loving the stories that were told in country music. And so at 30 years old, I finally arrived in Nashville to chase my dream of learning how to write great songs and great stories. And about 3 years later, that's when I had my very first song recorded by Colin Ray, a big #1 song called Someone You Used to Know. And that's what bought the farmhouse. And one of the neat things, just story-wise, imagine that, how many of you were here last year for the festival? A number of you were, so I'm not sure if I made it really clear to you or not, but think about in 1999, my very first song I ever had recorded, I used those royalties to buy or at least put a down payment on this old farmhouse. And 24 years later, that man who was a famous singer in the 90s, he sang and he closed the festival last June. He was the last artist to sing, and he sang my song that bought our farm in the field 24 years later. Thank you. That's a great story. Not just the beginning of it, but just the full circleness. Like that's a special moment. And like the first year, it was a special moment for. This is storytelling at its best. But I'll tell you. Well, I'll get there in a minute. I have too much to say and not enough time. All right, let's go back here. At the time when I bought this farmhouse, I was just a man looking for a house to raise my kids in, or at least I thought that's what I was doing. I was 33 years old and had never owned my own house before. I had grown up mostly living in trailers and apartments, and so getting the opportunity to buy my own house and have a place to raise my children was a big, big deal. But looking back, it's very easy to see that I wasn't just looking for a house. I was looking for a home. And my home came in the form of a rundown old farmhouse that I began fixing up. And as I started fixing that old house up, scraping and sanding and plumbing and painting, God began working on me, fixing me up while I was fixing up this old house, restoring me while I was restoring the house. And though the house has come a long, long way, the work inside of it and inside of me continues. And God continues calling me home. And for me, home, what home really is, was about as foreign of a concept as taking a trip to the moon. I really didn't even know what it was. My mother raised 5 kids on her own. She was a single mother, and so she just tried to survive our whole lives. And so she was trying to figure out what home was for us. But she had no idea what it was because she hadn't really had one either. And so it's difficult to come home to something that you've never seen before. Now, over the past 25 years, I have come to see that home was not just the place I was living in, the house or the land that we were on. It was much, much more than that. It was the life that I was living. It was the much, much bigger picture and the much smaller micro picture too. Little by little, I began to see home as the foundation for everything else in my life and in our lives. The place where we lay down at night, but also where we are meant to live, truly, truly live our lives each day from the cradle to the grave. And so let me try for a little bit to turn a porch light on for you so you can get a better glimpse of what home is or what it is meant to be for all of us. Imagine a place that you could build your whole life around from the moment that you're born till the moment you die. It is where your dreams are born and where they will take flight, where you not only eat your own food, it's where you grew it, where your children are born and where they learn and grow, taught by the ones who love them the most, the place where you make your money and where you spend your money, where you find your entertainment and your rest, where your food and your nourishment comes when you're hungry, and your peace and your joy comes when you're restless. That is what home should be. Now, there's a phrase in the music industry that when I moved to town in 1995, I heard this a lot, and I've never forgotten it. The saying is that it all begins with a song, meaning that the music we all love so much in our lives that we listen to, all these years, that music all began with someone like me, someone sitting down with a guitar or a piano or a pen or all of those things and writing a song. It all begins with a song. They came up with the right words and the right melody together that became the song, that in time became the recording that you heard, that in time became something that is a soundtrack to your lives that you are familiar with and love. But without the song, none of the rest of it could be. And in the same way, I want to tell you, homesteading, it all begins with the home. None of the rest of this that we're talking about or learning about this weekend even matters without the home. There is no point in homesteading, homemaking, or anything else without the home being the foundation of all of it. We can plant seeds, water and weed, and grow an amazing garden filled with the most beautiful fruit and vegetables that anyone has ever seen. But if our family is splintered and without roots and our marriage is failing, who cares? We can have a pasture full of healthy animals, but if our home is not a healthy place where the lives that matter most to us can thrive, then it is all in vain. Now, what the world tells us is there are lots and lots of ways to live and do life. You pick it, anything you want, and people do. We all do. But I do not believe that that's true. I really think there is a right way, or at least I believe there is. In my experience, I'm 59 years old. I feel for certain there is a better way to live than most of us have been and are living today. I also want to say this morning that you are not here by accident at the Homestead Festival in Tennessee. I don't believe in coincidences. You are here right now at this moment, and I know I am here right at this moment talking to you for a reason. Something inside of you, just like me, wants something more than more what we have been led to believe that we want and need for our lives. When you look around today, there has never been a generation or a people who have had more comfort and ease and money and food right at our fingertips. And yet, statistics show that we are the most unhappy, unhealthy people who have ever lived. Anxiety is at an epidemic level. Young people are committing suicide at a scale we've never seen before. While people are more connected and have more information available to them than they've ever had, most people have lost any real connection with others. And with that, they've lost all their sense of meaning and purpose. Millions and millions of people wake up every day asking the question, what does any of this even matter? I believe that we are all on a journey home. For some of us, it is a journey back to our roots, maybe even back to our home place or the hometown or our community that we were raised in, or to the family that we left a long time ago in search of something we thought would make us happy. For some of us, we are on a journey to find a home that we have actually never been to, a place and a life that we have never actually seen. But something inside of us is longing for it and leading us home. Inherently built inside of each and every one of us is a desire to find our way home. Much like the millions of birds each year that take flight with no one prompting or telling them, their bodies internally leading them thousands and thousands of miles every year to return to a place that is deep inside of them. Like the salmon born way upstream, who over time travel thousands of miles away from where they started. And in one moment, they are called to return to a place where their life began, and they begin an incredible journey back to that place. And though scientists cannot pinpoint what it is that makes that happen, somehow, in some way, they know how to choose the exact river, the exact tributaries, the exact streams, and will do anything and everything to get back to their home. Today, I'd like to plant the seed in your heart that the thing that you are longing for most and needing in your life is home, to a life of wholeness, one that you cannot poke holes in. No one can. That when you wake up in the morning and you lay down at night, you know in your heart your journey is over. You are home. But how do we find this home? What does this even mean? Well, first, in my opinion, you're going to have to decide. We're going to have to choose and pick a place and decide, truly decide to live there, to build a life and raise a family in this place with these people at this time. We are not a people that makes decisions. If you decide something, there is no other option. We choose. We have this information overload. We have decision fatigue. And the reason is we never have to decide anything. All of us are struggling with this. It will require you at some point to make a decision and decide that this is my place. It may not be the place I had in mind. It may not be as big or as beautiful. I may not have the neighbors that I wanted. It may not be what I was shooting for, but this is the place I choose to live. Nowhere else. That's how we must begin. That doesn't mean that you can't, in time, God won't lead you somewhere else, but you cannot, you have to stay. You have to be at home to be at home. You have to pick. You have to begin. No more moving, no more searching. Choose somewhere and live there, truly live there. And then from there, we must bring our lives home with us, our families, our wives and our husbands and our children, our parents and our grandparents. We must bring home our children's education, our work, and our dreams. And I don't mean work in the sense of now I get to work from home instead of going to the office. Most of us are just, tied to the computer and we're able to do our job from home. We're able to do our job from home. We don't actually work from home. And work isn't tied to our home. We have to bring our children's education home. We bring our work and our dreams home. We bring our food and the production of it home. And we even bring our entertainment home. What if your home was the place where your children are born, where your parents and you one day die, where your kids learn and grow up and want to stay and be part of, and want to raise their children to stay and be part of, where you work and dream, where you play, where you live, where you shop. Joey and I bought this farmhouse in 99. Joey and I got married in 2002. And my journey home, part of it has been understanding what home is. And so all those things that I just mentioned, over time, God would require them of me. I would have to learn that these are all things that are part of home. And they changed everything for me. So when I met Joey, she had a very strong faith, but there was one thing we could not talk about, and that was having children. We could not talk about having children because we would get into an argument because it was the one thing that she would not give to God no matter what. She wanted to be a country singer, and so she was willing to talk about anything except for that. And so we went through our lives for the first 10 years or so without really having a conversation about it. But something inside of me was a little afraid for her because I thought, what if God wants the one thing that she refuses to give up? And in time, it became clear that that's what it was. And so one day after 10 or 11 years, she came to me and said, he has blessed us so much. My dreams, my love, our marriage, everything has come true beyond my wildest dreams. I can't withhold this anymore. And so she said, I think I need to give this to God. Now, I was 47 at the time. My two younger girls, who I was a single father when we bought this farmhouse, they had both grown up, and I was reaching the place where I could have just sailed off into the sunset, which sounded pretty good. My wife was real pretty. I could sail with her pretty easy, and we had a good life and farmhouse and some family and friends nearby. But when that happened, it was such a mountain that moved. It was impossible. It was impossible for her to have that conversation with me. And so all I could think was, whatever that is, I'm going there. Even though I'm too old to have another child, if that's what he wants, if that's what she's willing to give, this is not about me giving. It's about watching her give. And so she does, and then she gets pregnant. And I remember she was still terrified. She was terrified of having a baby. All the stuff, all of it. One day, we found an iPad and we were watching, and I came across this thing and I said, Joey, watch it. She couldn't even really watch babies. She couldn't even watch them because she didn't feel anything. And when I'd feel it, I'd just be sobbing next to her, crying. Look, this is what we're going to have. She's like, yeah, I know. I'm afraid of that. But one day we pushed this thing, and I'd never heard of it before. It was called The Business of Being Born, and we pushed play. And in it, they tell this story about women who decide to have babies at home and why. And they actually come to, there's a real famous place called The Farm, which is where the resurgence of midwifery came from in the 1970s. Like the most famous midwife in the world now is there. She's an old hippie. And that happened an hour from here, and some of those people were still there. Joey watched this enthralled, and it all made complete sense. 90 minutes later on an iPad, she turns it off and she says, we're going to have this baby in this house with no doctor, just like they had babies 100 years ago. And that lady right there, her name was Miss Pamela, she pointed at her on the screen and she said, she's going to be my midwife. And she went from being terrified, thank you, to being empowered because she saw a right, real way. Not that there's anything wrong with going to a hospital and doing it all those ways. It's a lot easier to just plan it for, the 25th at 2 p.m. And fear's a big deal. I don't judge anybody for it, but I'm telling you, when she made that choice, the next 9 months of her life changed because she started preparing not for the worst pain in her life, but the greatest joy. She believed she was going to have the greatest joy. And in one moment, when we had that baby at home, which I'd never seen anything like this before. I mean, I knew where they came from. But when they laid this little almond-eyed baby in my arms and in her arms in particular, in that moment, she went from someone terrified to nothing else mattered in life. She had never been born before. It was like, this is all that matters. And she was so in love with being a mother in an instant. And that was what was on the other side of her greatest fear, which is amazing. So, I won't go through all this stuff, but you imagine I'm looking across at the couch and she's holding in Indiana and she's just like looking at, so in love. And she goes, I could see where we could have 5 of these. I was like, okay, all right, enough. I get it. I met a family over there, a real ambitious family. There's 5 or 6 kids over there. And I just love seeing that. And if Joey could have, she would have had 5 or 6 more of it in an instant. And it just didn't work out. But it was incredible to see, because she knew it was the right thing. This was home, and this is how it was supposed to be done. And this is the way it's always been done. We just invented this new version in the last, 100 years or whatever. And so that was amazing. That felt like part of coming home, was realizing, what if we had a baby at home? And so if she was here, she would wear you out. If she saw somebody pregnant, you're in trouble. But then one day, 2 years later, when Indiana was 2 years old, we would discover another part of being home and living a life at home. And that would be, we would end our life at home. Now, Joey and I, when I bought this farmhouse, we have an old cemetery right out here. There's a little fence around it now because we just haven't figured out. She's still got a wooden cross there. I haven't figured it out yet. So we've got a little, as far as like letting other folks come, maybe sometime, but right now we haven't figured it out. But there's a sassafras tree right there, a little grove of trees. And the people who built the house, the Hardisons in 1878, they're buried there, and a couple of their children from the 1800s. And so we used to walk out there and romantically, we'd say nostalgically, we'll be buried together here one day. But then one day comes and it's different than you have in mind. And you realize you're going to lose the person that you love, and then you're going to have to make a real decision. And so we called and we said, can you be buried at home? Which I don't know anybody. Can you be buried at home? We don't really ask that question. And we called down here, and some states you can't probably. But here we called down and they said, yeah, you can be buried in your yard if you want. I said, we have a cemetery, so I thought it would be okay. They said, yeah, it's absolutely fine. It's just out of style. People just don't do it anymore. They want to be far away from death. They don't want to be anywhere near it. Well, I don't want my loved one to be far, far away. Joey's brother passed away when she was 18, and he's buried in Indiana. That's a long way from her. So when we had to choose, we said, let's do it here. And it became, instead of this place where people were from a long time ago, it became a place where we were going to be, where she was going to be, and one day I would be. And so we decided, what if home was the place where you're buried and you go back? That's regenerative agriculture. I literally been thinking, we went out on Memorial Day. My mother's stone is out there and Joey's cross. And there's some flowers. She loved, what are the black, they're really pretty flowers that are black. Black-eyed Susan, those are her favorites. So there's still some of those that grow out there. But I realized if I really wanted to honor her, I would bring some asparagus crowns out there. And if we started to harvest asparagus, I mean, it'd be a little weird inviting people over for dinner. But she would have loved that. On purpose. On purpose. And so that became a possibility that you start to realize, wow, this is what they've always done until recently. They've always done this. So, but then you also, not just when life is over, but we realized when she went through all of her cancer treatments and everything else, at some point, we said enough. Most people never say enough. You just can't, because we lose hope, and we don't want to lose hope. We didn't lose hope. We just put our hope somewhere else. At some point, you can look over, and go, it's just not going to happen this way. They'll keep taking our money, and they're not doing anything wrong, but it's not going to happen. And we finally had to ask the question. They would never tell us. They could have told us 6 months before, and they would have, but we didn't ask. No one hardly ever asked. And when we finally did, and they said, it's not going to help. It might help for a couple months. Then we realized we need another option, and so we came home. And we decided, if it's God's will, we will die at home. She will die at home surrounded by her family. And what we were really choosing was, she's going to live at home. And so she lived 5 months. And we went home to Indiana. We actually got this back bedroom ready for her. When she went home to say goodbye to all of her family in Indiana, and when she got there, she loved it so much she didn't want to come home. But instead of dying at our home, she died at her mama's home, where she was raised, which is still home. It was and I'll tell you, that 5 months was the greatest 5 months of my life, because everything gets cut down to the bone. It's just you and the ones you love. Not all my ambition, music industry, whatever it is we're doing, none of that stuff, it doesn't exist. You got a little one who's 2 years old and a playpen next to you and a suitcase full of clothes, and there's nothing else you need. You really cuts life to the bone. And so we spent the last 5 months there, and Joey died at home. And it was the most incredible thing to experience that, rather than giving it to someone else. I didn't even know that all of these things are part of my journey home. I didn't know it was possible. And from there, I've realized my neighbors, Richard and Laura, who lived just on the other side of Keith and Candy, they bought a little house for like $10,000. I don't know if it's 400 or 800 square feet, and they fixed it up. And his parents got sick, and they brought them here. And I watched them miserably take care of his parents. They were not easy. I just came and visited for dinner sometime, and I thought, oh, goodness, this is tough. And they passed away there, and they took care of them, and they honored them. And then her parents got sick. Her parents owned all this farm. We wouldn't be here, but as they got sick, they sold us this farm. And they ended up in a 400 or 500 square foot little thing, because life gets cut down to the bone. And their daughter and son-in-law took care of them to the very, very end. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Was it hard? How do you manage a career and a life and grandkids when the great-grandparents are dying? It was right. It was just right. And you know what? They had something to offer their family. Joey had, in her last 5 months when she was dying, I always say this all the time, God let us be famous, rurally famous, means a little bit famous, only so we could have enough cachet or whatever with our names, so that when she did what he really had her here for, which was to die in front of people loving her, he made that possible. And so her end of life, being surrounded that way, that's her greatest, it's not even close, that's her greatest story. So I encourage you, just consider having a baby at home. Consider it. Consider ending your life at home. Consider taking care of your family when they get older. Consider it. Maybe it's on purpose. Maybe they're not. Maybe they actually have value. Maybe they're, last night there was a lady who was 85, and she came and said, could I take a picture right before it went over? She said, my husband's 92. Can I take a picture? Yes. And I did, and I just thought, they're out here enjoying the Homestead Festival at 92, learning some skills so they can grow some of their own food. And I thought, when I was looking at that man and that lady, they have everything to offer. They are a walking history book. And so I just want you to consider that. I want you to also consider that home could be, maybe should be, the place where you raise your children. I didn't grow up homeschooling. We homeschooled Hopi and Heidi 6 months or something, only because we were mad at the school when my kid, we were mad at them. They were terrible. They were terrible, and our kids were failing. Who's going to fix this problem? I thought, well, I'll just bring them home until I can figure it out. So I went and visited some really expensive schools in Franklin where all the money is, and I realized I can't afford these people to fix the problem. So instead I put them in a private Christian school about 30 minutes away, and I could afford that one. But they didn't actually fix the problem. It just created a different problem. And so my girls, both of them grew up, and I never really had the opportunity to take any responsibility for their education and what they learned and who they are. And I wish that I could have. And then when Indiana was growing up, when her mom passed away, as a lot of you know the story, her mom was going to homeschool her. There was no question about it. She wasn't even going to let it be somebody else's responsibility. She was going to do it because she said she knew, I want to be responsible for who she becomes. And if I send her away every day, all day long, I'm not the person who she becomes. She becomes everyone else. And so when Indy was 3 or 4, we started building a one-room schoolhouse, and then that became a farm school. And Indy's been in the one-room schoolhouse for 5 years. Yeah, it's nice. Thank you. And it's been so good for her, partly because she gets to, we make the rules. We're gonna say a prayer. We're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance. We're gonna talk about God. We're gonna talk about what matters most. We're gonna spend a lot of time in the big classroom, the one that's outside the classroom. All those kinds of things you can do. You're going to be with a bunch of kids, multiple ages, just like any big families. That's actually how you're supposed to be surrounded by kids of all ages. That's how we grow. Anyway, I could talk about that forever. But anyway, that wasn't on purpose. It was by accident because we didn't have any other choice. I had to do something else. But then we've worked our way into homeschooling, and now Rebecca is homeschooling Indiana every morning in the schoolhouse, and then we're doing these enrichment classes where people come in for these events called Little Schoolhouse on the Prairie, where they can come. You guys, instead of having only 11 children come be with Indiana, now anyone can come. They announce the dates, and they come and they sign up. And so for one day, children from all across the country or county, they come and they get to go to school in a one-room schoolhouse with a full-on, chalkboards, rag dolls, and all the things, and learn what life was like back then, and some perspective to say it wasn't all bad back then. And it's a wonderful thing. So anyway, now we're actually even more. We want that to become what it wants to be. But I want to be the one who helps her become who she's supposed to be. It's my responsibility. It feels right. I didn't read it I'd read it in a lot of books, but it took me a while to figure out that's part of home. For me, that's part of home. Is it inconvenient for the mothers who are doing it? Yep. Is it, if you didn't like school, the last thing you want to do is have to teach your kids the thing you hated? Do you love your kids? It doesn't really matter. If you just only teach them about love, then you win. Who cares about the rest of it? They're going to find their way. They'll learn when they want to learn when they're ready. And so educate your kids at home. That's been a wonderful experience. Indiana's only 10 years old, but she she doesn't seem to have any limit to what she can learn because she doesn't know that she's not the same as everyone else. And she is not the same. She's not the same, but she is the same in the sense she's just a little girl. She's just a little girl. But one day she will be a big girl, and she's made it very clear. Joel Salatin was here. She had me send Joel an email. Mr. Joel, Indy, when she turns 18 years old, would like to come and be a steward at your farm, and she'd like to work all summer. And she's excited about doing that. And Joel sent an email back and said, that sounds great. Let's see what her character is like when she's 18, as he should. Now, this is my job between now and then, but she has something to really look forward to. All right, it's also a place, home is the place where we should work and dream. I never, where does that come from? We raise our kids to have better lives than us. Let's give them a better education. We don't want them to be at home. That's the worst thing in the world. That's why we don't have anybody at the farm. We're not building anything sustainable. Who cares about sustainable agriculture if we don't have a sustainable family? And so for me, I grew up wanting to be Johnny Cash or wanting to be Merle Haggard or wanting to be these people I saw on TV. My father worked on the railroad, and even though they were divorced, I grew up idolizing a lot of these country singers, and so that's what I wanted. It's what he wanted to do and never got to, and so I picked his dream up, and he passed away, and I pulled it out of his coffin at the funeral, and I carried it with me, and here I am, and it added up to absolutely nothing. My late wife and I, we're at the academy. We won Grammys and so many things, and it was so weird. It's probably as you get older, and this will happen to all of you young people. Older people already know it. It doesn't really matter where you are. At some point, whatever it is you've been working towards. For us, it was at the award show. You're surrounded by Garth and Tim McGraw and all these people, all of your heroes. You're in this small thing with 20,000 people everywhere, and you can't believe you're in this front 3 or 4 rows. And they're calling your name, and all I could think was, what does any of this even matter? That's so strange. And that's the way that it happens quite a bit. And I would think one of the reasons is that it's not rooted in anything. And so for me, I've come to realize that my work needs to be at home. Not that everybody can do it, but I would encourage you to figure out how could I do my job from home? Not because, and I don't mean just like, you have a cubicle at home where you're locked away. I mean in the sense of I want to raise my children. I want to be near them. I want to have lunch with them. I want to wake up next to them. I want that. And so for me, you're here. Selfishly, I'm sorry. This is my job, and I brought you to my house. It really is. Just so you know, we're learning how to homestead. We could go travel and watch all these people, or we could bring them here, and you could learn with us. I'm just working from home. And every day we have a modular home that older couple put out there years ago that passed away. And it's our office. We call it the HQ. If the farm can have a headquarters, this is the HQ. And we all get together every day and work and dream. And it's the greatest thing because for me, I realized they were just in all those other things I was doing before. I could poke holes in them. I could see where it wouldn't work out, or in time it was not going to be fulfilling. But in this world where I am, I want to get to a place to where I get to do what I love with the people I love in the place I love. If you can work towards that, you will never work a day in your life. And we're not good at these things. We're learning to be a family. It's not just me that have been finding my way home. My family is finding their way home. And guess what? They got different ideas of home than I do. It's not easy, but we're finding our way. And so considering bringing wives home, consider bringing husbands home. Consider it. It's worth it. If you can do it, and you can do it, it might take a little while. Home should be where you play. Joey, she was smart. She made the TV go away really early on. She didn't like TV. She didn't like football. She didn't like football. And just between us, she wouldn't respect me if I sat around drinking a beer watching football. No offense. She wouldn't respect me. She just wouldn't do it. And so she made the TV go away. Now I could still go visit friends and stuff like that. There was a time or two, a Super Bowl came, I plugged it back in, invited a few people over, and then by then she had trained me well and I got rid of it. But it wasn't really that. She wanted us to be together, and she knew that thing right there was going to take us away from each other. And so we haven't had a TV, in 20 years. It's almost the whole time. We've been 15 or 20 years. But it's also the internet. Everybody knows we now have optic on our farm. It cost a lot of money to bring optic out to the farm, and we paid for it. And even though the internet's not working like it should for all the vendors and stuff, we're trying really, really hard. But when it gets right there to that concert hall, it stops. It doesn't even come to my house. They've got a little thing that points at my house that if I want to get on a computer, it kind of works. But I don't want it too much. I want a little bit of it when I need it. I don't want it to interrupt my life all the time. I don't want to spend all my time on it. And as far as like playing, we're learning. It's hard. It's boring. Do you want to play games? Not really. What I'd really like to do is watch Netflix. What I'd really like to do is I hear people talking about things. That's what I'd really like to do, is something easy. But I know it's not good for me. It's not good for us. We could do it, and we do it sometime. We can go over. There's a spot here, the Eagle's Nest up there. We could go watch something if we wanted to. But I don't want other people to entertain me. There is a whole industry, and I'm part of it. I do this for a living. My job is to entertain you so you don't actually have to look at your life. That's really what most of us do, is we want to be entertained, because it's terrifying if we stop and really look at ourselves. It's scary. But the reality is if we can consider, what if we start taking some of the responsibility for entertaining ourselves? Let's get together with our neighbors. Last night I told Keith and Russell, and I said, this dance floor with all the kids, we built that. We never had a dance floor before. And I was like, I don't like the idea of a dance floor. It's a Homestead festival. Then the kids are losing their minds. And I said, hey, when everybody leaves, can we do a gathering? And we're just going to do a family cookout, and we're going to have the dance floor for the kids. We're going to do this after you guys are gone. That sounds like an amazing evening, and nobody has to do it for us. I would encourage you to bring your play home. If you leave it up to the world, they will do everything for you. You won't have to grow anything, cook anything, do anything, buy anything, go anywhere. You won't have to do anything. And it's enticing. I just want to absorb it too. But there is something about taking responsibility for these things one at a time. And one of them is take responsibility for your play and your entertainment. I have a concert hall. It was a barn. It was originally just a shop with a bunch of tools and stuff in it. And then it became a place where Joey and I started making our own TV show and broadcasting it across the country. We didn't just do it for fun. We did it because we didn't want to leave. We didn't want to sing about living on a farm. We wanted to live on one. And now, even this morning, y'all made my breakfast. We just walked across the driveway and went inside there and ate. And it's a blessing to us and a blessing to others. And I'd like to think that I'm providing community entertainment, something good for it. I'm not doing it the best in the world. I'm not sure what God has in mind for all of it. But the point is, I'm thinking about it. We're thinking about what God is doing and what we're supposed to be doing in our lives. So consider taking responsibility for your entertainment, your home entertainment. Consider taking responsibility for how you live your life. I've been reading this new book called The Anxious Generation. And I just spent a year I took a year, which was not fun for all the people around me. I had already been on a flip phone for three and a half years, and I didn't do any texting, so I'd already made it hard for everybody. But it was really fun and really good for me, good for my family, good for Indy. But last year, when I left Montana from August 1st to August 1st, I decided to take a year off the internet, no internet. And it's not just that I just want to do crazy things. I want to remember 15 years ago. It's not that long ago. I just wanted to remember what it was like when I didn't just go like, well, what should I check what's coming? I didn't want all those dopamine hits, and I just wanted to be free of it and see what happens. And so whatever that quote is, I went to the woods. That's my version of that. I wanted to live life deliberately. In my woods, turning off that computer and just try and be here and be present. It was very good for me. And then at the beginning of the year, I got an iPhone again, and everybody lost their minds. I said, text me. And I realized I could be so much more helpful for people. I could love people a lot easier than I could before. But now I know what it means, and it doesn't control me. I have the ability to play a role in it. And so I want you to consider making your home the place that you live. We had a family restaurant for 17 years. I mentioned this, the Doherty boys who are doing the timber framing, they were talking about some things that are going on in the news, and Joel Salatin was telling me when he's driving about some things, and I was fascinated because I hadn't heard any of it. Because the last time I was making an album, and I don't know, whatever it would have been, January 21 or whatever it was, the last news I watched, they were storming the Capitol. That was the last, and I was like, I get it. More of this. And I haven't seen anything. And it's not been any worse. I haven't had any anxiety. I'm not worried. There was a tornado that was about 3 miles away, and I watched it from my porch. It never got to my house. It could have, praise God, it could have, and it got to some other people's houses. But then it's my news. That's my news. My news is local. My people are local. I don't need to watch everything happening all the time. That doesn't mean we can't see, but most of the time we're so busy being so upset about all the things going on everywhere, we're not paying any attention to anyone or anything here. So I encourage you to consider living at home. Also, I want to consider you shopping at home. You make money, why not spend it here? You don't have to. I mean, I love that if you can spend it to these vendors. A lot of people are here. They've made some wonderful things. I want more and more people to come all the time, not because we want to make more money off the festival. We want to encourage people more and more. And when these vendors come, I just want them to go home with empty trailers. I want to encourage you. Amazon's easy. I got it again. It's real easy. I can have a thought. Boop. I push on it and I say, hey, I ordered. Oh, I know it came in just now. Almost that fast. Pretty quick. But it's not helping anything. I enjoy that it can show up, and those Amazon boxes can just pile up on my porch. I'll get to them, but I want to think about it. When my truck broke down, I don't want to call some company that's a huge corporation that can fix it and has chains everywhere. I want to call Trey Reeves, who lives down the road, and give him my business and my money. I want as much of my money to go to my neighbors as possible. That's my home. My home is not just my house. It's not just my family that live here on our farm. It's my community. And my responsibility is give them your money. They come to our concert hall. Some of them are here for this. They give us their money. It won't happen if we don't take accountability for it and responsibility for it. So I want to consider you spending your money at home, near home. There are some things that take us away from home, like I mentioned. I'm going to do a talk tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to lead a panel tomorrow. You can put that other one on there if you can. So we're going to do a panel tomorrow, or no, later today, not tomorrow. You guys won't be here tomorrow. Called Home Builders. And so I'm doing Rebecca is hosting a homemaker conference in October. She did one last year. There were only like 2 or 3 men there, and I was mostly helping do sound, and I cried the whole time. I mean, it was unbelievable. And all I could think is, gosh, we got to do a men's one of these. So we're doing a men's one, which we'll talk, if you come back at 1 or whatever time, the next thing is there's a home builders one. And one of my talks is going to be called The Screens Are On, But No One Is at Home. Those things, they can be powerful tools, but be careful with all these things because they take us away from home more than anything. Henry David Thoreau wrote in 1854 in his book Walden, The cost of a thing is the amount of life that is to be exchanged for it in the long run. These cost everything. But your most valuable resource is not your money. It is your time. And that's why it's so humbling that you gave your time way more than your money. We appreciate that too. But our most valuable resource is our time, and we give it away all the time to things that don't matter. I'm going to speak on just a couple other things. I'm supposed to be done at 10:15. You guys okay for a little bit longer? Community and connection, I'd like to speak about that for a minute. We are all hardwired to desire and need community and connection with others. Most of us don't have either one, or at least not any of any substance. The internet has mostly replaced what was community and connection with something that is a terrible substitute for it. My favorite online experience, which was yesterday morning, is when I put clothes on the line. And then when they're dry, I get to feel and smell how fresh they are. That's my favorite online experience. My favorite chat room is the coffee shop. It's Muletown Coffee, just up the road. I get to talk with real people about real things in their real lives. We get to look at each other in the eye and speak to each other, and I get to listen to them and share with them, and they listen to me. That's the chat room I want to be part of. There's nothing wrong with these things, but I just want you to think about it a little bit differently. We recently took a week in April. It was during my birthday, so I got to celebrate a birthday. We did this last year. We have some friends in Minnesota who told us about this. We did this thing called a power down. We live in a house built in 1878, and so we want to remember what matters. And so for 1 week in April, the 21st to the 28th or something, we went to the breaker box and we just turned the master breaker off. And then we went to the well. We didn't have to, because when the breaker went off, the well went off. And we spent a week living in a farmhouse the way that they would have lived it in 1878. And it was incredible. It was the greatest thing. Now, we didn't choose the middle of winter to do it, but it was already hot and uncomfortable. And we were dirty a lot, and it was fantastic. You talk about some cold, fast showers. When you run through the field, we ran a couple of garden hoses through the field, and we cheated a little bit. We ran them through the bathroom window, and we could fill the toilet. That was our cheating. And we could hang it over a shower curtain and turn it on. And I was, I'm game for this stuff. Indiana took showers just out in the middle of the yard, and we just washed clothes. We washed our dishes out there. But it was really, really fun to unplug and be together. And the other part that we did is we took our phone, not just phones and everything, we also took every clock off the wall and we put them away. And for 1 week, you don't have any idea what time it is from the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed. And you will see life differently. You'll see a day in a way that you are not used to. You have no idea. It's like, I think, is it lunch? We don't think this way. You literally, and it's getting dark. It's got to be bedtime. You will experience life differently. And I would venture to say you will experience life like we're supposed to experience life. Everything else we've just kind of created over time. So that was a great fun. Power down. Don't be afraid. It's really fun. And terrible. I want to consider we're a consumer culture. All we do is consume. That's one of the reasons that this festival, Joey and I did a music festival for a number of years, just a little bitty one in our front yard. We had about 1,000 people there, and we sang, and some friends came over and sang, and my Uncle David, we have a complicated family. My Uncle David turned out to be my Aunt David. But anyway, Aunt David would flip hamburgers, and we just did it as a big family, and it was super fun. But it was smaller, but it was beautiful. But it was only music. And at the end of the day, I would wear Joey out all the time. Like, what does this even matter? It was nice. But man, when we came upon the idea of combining music and meaning where we could learn all day and then do some music, that's where my heart was. And it's so wonderful. And one of the reasons is that we are all consumers. It's a consumer world now. And most of us from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, we only consume stuff all day long. We have not produced or made anything, and we don't know how. None of us know how. Now, you guys are here learning how to possibly produce something. Food, maybe it's a craft, maybe it's something else, but we're here really learning to become producers and not just consumers. And what's amazing about it is Joel says, which I'm going to mention again later, I want to talk to him about it. He told me this when I first met him. He said, if you begin to question where your food comes from, you will begin to question everything. And what I think about that is that's kind of on the negative side of it. Like in the sense of like, maybe I won't trust the health industry either or the education industry, which is true. But on the positive side, when you begin to take responsibility for the food you eat, you will begin to want to take responsibility for other things in your life too. And that's what I'm talking about. So I want to encourage you to consider when you wake up, make something today. Make an egg sandwich. Don't just go through Burger King on the way. Make something with your kids. Make something. Produce something. And one day, I'd like to imagine some of us will become vendors, if we're not already. I'd like to make something that could be for sale here. I do make some books and some CDs and stuff, but I'd like to make something else someday that could be part of it. Homesteading is a wonderful, wonderful thing that I'm excited about, and I'm thrilled to get to learn and take part in growing and raising food for my family. But I don't just want a sustainable food system for my family. I want a sustainable life, and that's really where my passion is. It's what I have to share with you. I want to encourage you to take responsibility for your own lives, and even if it's just a little bit at a time, you will not regret it. Now, it's hard to do, so I'm going to do you 2 songs. Got time for 2 songs? The first one, it's hard to do because it's scary. These changes, and a lot of you are already taking scary steps, coming here, challenging your belief system. These are hard things. They're scary. And a lot of us, like, I'm older, and I'm just now starting to get it. That's a real problem. We have grown children. We've already, we're not like, I've just begun my life and my family. I can start putting it together. We got a lot of fractured stuff. We got to just begin where we are. But it's scary, and I know that. And a lot of you are beginning where you are, and I just want to encourage you to keep going. So I see this is a song. I love this song. I see life. We all want the best fruit in life, but the good fruit is always out on a limb. And what that means is I see life in a particular way, that it's like we're all standing underneath a tree, a great big apple tree, a fruit tree, and all of us, all of humanity, all of America, Tennessee, whatever it is, we are all reaching for the good fruit. We want it. We all want it. We just, every day we wake up, we want the good fruit. And we're standing there, we got a whole bunch of us, even just this tent, full of people reaching for it. There ain't no good fruit right here. Too many people all down here where it's safe. You can see some, it's up there, but it's way out there on a limb. Like there's some really, really great fruit, but it will require, in order to have the good fruit, you must climb, shimmy up that tree, pick a limb, and start your way out. And when you're out there on that limb, where the good fruit is, it's all out there. It's very scary and shaky, and we're all afraid we're going to fall, which is why we don't do it. But that's why it's there. And most of the time, when you experience the good fruit, it's the greatest thing that ever happens. From time to time, do we fall? We do. But when you actually get to experience the best fruit that life has to offer, it will change things. And when you were terrified, it was so hard to make that first step, to climb up that tree and get out on a limb. It just took everything you had. The next time you see an opportunity, you'll go a little faster. You'll try a little bit more. And that's what my life is. I'm encouraged, whether it's building a concert hall or building a schoolhouse. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to make a festival. None of us do. That's not a good reason not to do it. I've just learned over time, when you start to see these things and you experience them and you experience the fruit, one day you're going to wake up, and when you're around your friends or your family, and they're going to be talking and thinking about the good fruit, and they'll be like, yeah, we should really do that. And then they'll look around and they can't even find you because you climbed the tree so fast and you're already way out on the limb because you know that's where all the good stuff is. Jarvis is the corner man where the Golden Gloves trained. The sports long passed him by, but his love for it remains. He was something in his younger days, the best in these parts. He had the tools of a champion, but he never had the heart. Now he always wonders what if, when he locks up that gym and regrets that he never left the trunk and went out on a limb. Sarah teaches voice where she used to attend. She sings in Sunday choir and at weddings for friends. She had dreams of Broadway from such an early age, but she settled for a small town life and minimum wage. Now she always wonders what if, when she sings her Sunday hymns and regrets that she never left the trunk and went out on a limb. We walk this way but once, we get no second spin. Looking back on all you've done, will you wonder what might have been? Rachel was the girl on which Richard's heart was set, and each night he tried to find the right words each time their eyes met. He spent hours in the mirror rehearsing what to say, convinced himself each night that tomorrow would be the day. Now he always wonders what if, each morning she wakes with him, what life would be had he never left the trunk and went out on a limb. I want to mention a couple other things. I was trying to think through this, and I'll mention this later on. I like to think about that we're really in the home restoration business, home improvement, home renovation business in a lot of ways. You know, that's what God, I think, is really doing when he's getting our hands in the soil. It may look a little bit different, but it really is. You know, we want our homes to be restored. That's what I want my home to be restored to something that it's never been. And in some ways, I feel like that's kind of what we're in the Homestead Festival. We're kind of in this home restoration business. And the best way for me to think about it, and I want to see that. I'll put my TV back in when this show comes on. Have you ever seen Extreme Home Makeover? Let me tell you the show I want to see. It's Extreme Home Makeover, Home Edition. That's what they call it, right? Home Edition even. Well, the nerve of them. Imagine you meet a family and their life's a disaster. Their house is a disaster. And so a crew comes in, they meet them, and they're going to do a complete extreme home makeover. And so they break away, 6 weeks has gone by, the family's not there. They bring the family back, or you're not there anyway. The idea is that they tell me, I've never seen this show, but the idea, there's a great big bus pulled up in front, and then you get to this big reveal, and they say, bus driver, pull that bus out of the way. Move that bus, whatever it is. And the bus moves, and the house is exactly the same. But the family in front of it, completely different. Completely different. Their relationships with each other, with their community, with their children, are completely like nothing you've ever seen before. That's the show I want to see. That's the life I want to lead. And I think that's what we all have inside of our hearts. Now, talking about going out on a limb, the real journey back home, I couldn't go through this whole thing without saying this is all called back to the home. But as scary as it is, we are all going home one day. We're all going to make this journey back home when our time on earth is through, whether we like it or not. And whether we're ready or not, we're going to make that journey. And no one, with as much as we know, no one has ever escaped that. And in my time, I know it's not going to happen. And we're all going to make a journey home. And that's the real one. The one that I've been talking about the whole time is just this temporary home. Trying to make this temporary home a little bit better. But I've come to realize myself on that bigger journey, and even this one, they're all tied together in one way. There's one limb in my life. Well, there's a few limbs in my life, that I've been afraid of. I'm a limb jumper. I mean, I'm out on a limb. It's bouncing. People are walking underneath me. He's going to fall. No, I'm not. I'm good. And I jump to another limb because I see bigger fruit. I'm crazy out of my mind in some ways, but then there are some limbs that I don't go anywhere near, whether you know it or not. So one that's been a big one for me is before Joey came along, I'd made a big mess of my life, and I hadn't experienced love in any form. Not really. I had kids and I knew that, but I hadn't experienced real love and relationship. And so when Joey came along, I said, God, I just need I prayed for just a little bit of something good. I don't need a lot. Just a little bit of something good. And by the time he was done, my cup runneth over and flood the whole county. I mean, it really is. Most people that are here, they when I go through a grocery, I'm pumping gas and people just come up and wrap their arms around me. They don't even say anything. They just hug me while I'm pumping. Oh, I loved her. I loved you guys. And I'll say, I loved us too. And I loved her too. And it's been 8 years. It's been 8 years, and I've tried really hard to honor her, and I'm just tickled. It's so beautiful. And Indiana's, she's 10 years old now, and in a lot of ways, she's just like her mama. And anyway, it's been a kind of a beautiful, incredible thing that the guy who's least likely to be part of a love story becomes famous for one. That's what God can do. That you talk about redemption story. It's crazy. And yet, there are things that I hold tightly to that I still don't give him. One of them is moving on, moving forward, the possibility of something. And so, anyway, want to let you guys know I'm getting married on July 14th in Montana. Miss Rebecca, who has been teaching Indiana for 6 years, is going to teach me now. I don't know if she's here or not. I don't know where she is, but I can tell you one thing. She would be embarrassed and have a hard time. I did my first concerts 2 weekends ago, the first ones of the year, and I haven't even announced any more. But this is encouraging. I should do some more. I want to talk too sometimes, so maybe they'll let me talk. Well, it's my thing. I could do it, right? Maybe I'll let me talk. Anyway, when I was there, all these people came for her. They still come for her, for us, all those sort of things, for Indy and everything else. But this one, I was like, so Rebecca and Indy are sitting out there in the thing, and in the middle of the show, I just said, I said, Indy, would you come up here? And so sometimes she comes up and sings, and I'm going to see if she'll sing with me tonight when I do a song. Okay, so we'll see if she'll do that tonight. But I said, would you come up here with me? And she said, and so she came up, and I said, what are we doing in Montana? And she said, well, what are we doing this summer? We're going to go to Montana, which we do every summer for a little while. I said, what's happening in Montana? I said, every day you rip a calendar thing off, and it went from 99 days to 97. And she said, 47 days, Papa, whatever it was. I said, 47 days for what? Till what? And she just grabs the microphone and she says, when I was little, my mama passed away, and I've never got to have a mama. And she said, in 47 days, Papa's going to marry Miss Rebecca. She's going to be my new mother. And Rebecca cried, and I cried. We brought Rebecca up on stage, and I cried, she cried. And she's going to cry when she hears I told you this. But it's the next step. You know, the end is always the beginning, people. The end is the beginning. And I just have another, and that doesn't mean one ends and goes away. It just means that story becomes part of another more beautiful story, and I'm excited about it. So that's one of them. But the main thing is I want to sing you one more song. I have not written songs since Deanna was born. When Joey and I took a year off right before she was born, I have not written any songs. I decided to stop. Instead of writing songs, I wanted to make life our song, and I've been trying to live a better story more and more. And so, but this year, I've just now, in the last few months, started writing songs again. And even though I'm fumbling and stumbling my way through it, I'm going to play you my Going Out on a Limb song, Where I Am, and I want to encourage you because this is the big limb. This is the limb that changes everything, at least in my own life. I'll do anything, Lord, that you want me to, as long as it ain't something I don't want to do. I'll go anywhere, Lord, you want me to go, as long as it ain't to a place that I don't know. Lord, I'll give anything, 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 but everything to you. I'll be anything, Lord, you want me to be, just as long as I can keep on being me. I'll love anyone, Lord, you want me to love, unless it's someone who hurt me way too much. Lord, I'll give anything, 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 but everything to you. Lord, I want so much to give it all to you. I need your help, Lord, make my heart want to give anything, anything, anything. Give anything, 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 and everything to you. God bless you all. Thank you for having me.